Train your mind to respond, not react. Have you ever been in a situation where you reacted without thinking and immediately wished you could take it all back? Maybe it was something your friend said, something your boss did, or maybe your partner left the dishes out. Whatever it was, it set you off. And just like that, your emotions took the wheel, and the moment passed with you saying or doing something you regret. Now I want you to think about a time when you chose to respond instead of react. Maybe it wasn't easy, but you gave yourself that pause, that brief moment to breathe, and you responded with calm, clarity, or kindness. How did that feel? More controlled, right? And maybe it even led to a better outcome for you and the other person involved. What if I told you that you could train yourself to respond, not react, in every situation that triggers you? Not just sometimes, but consistently. What if you could break free from that automatic response cycle that so often leaves you feeling like you've lost control? I know, it sounds like a big ask. We're emotional beings, right? So, naturally, when something happens that pushes our buttons, it's easy to just react. Whether it's getting angry, shutting down, or snapping at someone. And let's face it, our brains are wired to do this. It's a survival mechanism, one that helped us out in the past. But in today's world, it's just not serving us anymore. The truth is, reacting doesn't give you control over your life, and it certainly doesn't make things better. Now I get it. It's easy to fall into old habits. Reacting is fast, it's automatic, and it's how most of us have been conditioned to handle emotions. But there's a huge difference between reacting and responding. And today, I want to share with you how you can make that shift. How you can train your mind to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. In this video, we're going to break down why it's so hard to pause and think before we speak or act, but also how we can break that pattern, step by step. I'll show you how you can retrain your brain, how mindfulness plays a huge role in creating emotional awareness, and most importantly, how responding instead of reacting can transform not only your relationships, but your peace of mind. The bottom line is this: you can change the way you respond to life's challenges, and in doing so, you'll start to notice something incredible. Life feels more in your control. Your emotions become easier to manage, and you start to see the world around you in a calmer, more centered way. So, if you're ready to take control of your reactions and begin to create more thoughtful, intentional responses to the world around you, let's dive in. Part 1. Understanding the difference. Reacting versus responding. All right, let's get clear on something right off the bat. Reacting and responding, while they might seem like two sides of the same coin, are actually worlds apart. And understanding this difference is where everything begins. Reacting. The automatic response. Let's start with reacting. You know that moment when you're caught off guard by something, and your emotions just take over? Maybe someone says something rude, or your partner doesn't do what they promised, and without thinking, you just react. Maybe you raise your voice, roll your eyes, or shut down completely. In the moment, it feels like you have to react. You don't have time to think. It's automatic. You're on autopilot, and you're just responding to what's happening around you. But here's the thing about reactions. They're often driven by emotion, not logic. They're fast, they're impulsive. And most importantly, they don't usually leave room for you to make the best choice. I mean, how often have you snapped at someone, only to feel guilty later because you didn't fully process what was happening? Or acted out of frustration, only to realize you could have handled things better? When we react, we're usually jumping into survival mode, fight or flight. That's how our brains are wired. Our limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for emotions, kicks in before the prefrontal cortex, which handles decision-making and logic, has even had a chance to catch up. Here's the catch. Reacting like this might have kept us safe in the wild. But in today's world, it often just leads to unnecessary conflict, misunderstandings, or regrets. Responding. Taking a step back. Now, let's talk about responding. This is a choice. It's not automatic. Responding is the opposite of reacting. It's pausing for a moment, just long enough to regain control of your thoughts and emotions. When you respond, you create space between the stimulus, what happens, and your reaction. You give yourself the time to process, to understand, and to act with intention. Think of it like this. Reacting is when you let the situation dictate how you feel and behave. Responding is when you choose how you want to show up, regardless of the situation. It's about making a conscious decision to not let your emotions completely dictate your actions. For example, let's say you're in a heated conversation with a friend. If you react, you might shout, say things you don't mean, and let your anger control the interaction. But if you respond, you might take a deep breath, pause, and say, "I'm feeling really upset right now. Can we take a minute to calm down before we talk this through?" In that small moment of pause, you've taken control of your emotions, and you've opened the door for a more constructive, peaceful conversation. Why does it matter? The thing is, reacting often leads to emotional overreaction, where we say or do things that escalate the situation instead of de-escalating it. It's not only exhausting, but it's also counterproductive. And worse, it strains relationships and affects how we feel about ourselves. When we respond thoughtfully, we communicate more effectively, we build trust, and we stay in control. We preserve our inner peace instead of letting external situations knock us off balance. So next time you're in a moment where you feel that emotional pull to react, remember this: you have a choice. You can choose to respond, even if it takes just a few seconds to breathe, reflect, and reset. Part 2. The power of mindful awareness. So if we know that responding is the way to go, how do we make it happen? How do we break out of that automatic reaction mode and actually learn to pause, breathe, and choose our response? The answer lies in mindfulness. Let's dive into that. What is mindfulness? You've probably heard the term mindfulness thrown around a lot these days, especially in conversations about mental health, stress reduction, and emotional well-being. But what does it actually mean? Mindfulness is all about being fully present in the moment, being aware of your thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations without judgment. It's the opposite of getting lost in autopilot mode, where you react without even realizing what's happening. When you practice mindfulness, you're tuning in to your inner world and what's happening around you, giving yourself the mental clarity to make conscious choices rather than just reacting based on what you're feeling. You know how sometimes you're so caught up in a situation that you don't even realize you're getting upset until it's too late? That's because your mind is operating on automatic. But with mindfulness, you start to catch yourself in the middle of those moments. You notice the first flicker of frustration, anxiety, or anger, and then you can decide whether you want to follow that feeling or step back from it. Mindfulness. The pause button. Now, here's the real power of mindfulness when it comes to responding instead of reacting. It gives you the pause button. That pause might last just a few seconds, but it's enough to reset your mind and body. When you pause, you give yourself the space to make a choice rather than being driven by impulse. Imagine you're stuck in traffic and you're running late. You feel the frustration start to bubble up. Your heart rate goes up, your shoulders tense. Normally, you'd feel this wave of irritation take over, right? You'd start blaming everyone else around you for their poor driving, or maybe you'd get angry at yourself for not leaving earlier. But if you practice mindfulness, you might notice that tension building up in your body. You take a deep breath. Maybe you even close your eyes for a second. And in that pause, you realize, this is out of my control. I can't change the traffic, but I can control how I respond to it. Instead of spiraling into anger, you might just let go of the frustration and accept the moment for what it is. This simple pause gives you control, and the more you practice this, the easier it becomes to step back from your emotions and choose a response rather than getting swept away by the initial reaction. How mindfulness changes everything. Mindfulness does more than just create space for a better response. It also builds emotional awareness. The more you practice being aware of your emotional state, the better you become at understanding your triggers and why they set you off. You begin to notice patterns in your emotions. For example, maybe you always get defensive when your partner brings up a certain topic. Or maybe you always feel dismissed when your coworker interrupts you. These are emotional cues that you can start to recognize before they take over. Once you're aware of your emotions, you can start choosing how to respond. Whether that's through compassion, patience, humor, or simply choosing to take a moment before speaking. So, what's next? Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but how do I actually start putting it into practice? Well, the good news is that mindfulness isn't some mystical, unattainable skill. It's a practice, something you build over time. And in the next part, I'm going to show you some powerful strategies for actually training your mind to respond thoughtfully, so that next time life throws you a curveball, you're not left scrambling to pick up the pieces. Instead, you'll be able to handle it with calm and confidence. Part 3. The Science of Thoughtful Responses. All right, by now, you get the idea that responding instead of reacting isn't just about being better in the moment. It's about understanding how your brain and body work so you can retrain them. So let's dig into some science to really understand what's going on in those intense moments and why mindfulness and response building are so powerful. The brain. Emotion versus logic. Let's start with the brain, because understanding the science behind your reactions is key to changing your responses. When something happens that triggers us, whether it's a stressful email, an argument, or even just a minor irritation, your brain goes into fight or flight mode. That's your amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions, taking over. The amygdala doesn't care about logic or consequences. It's concerned with survival. So when you feel that surge of emotion, your body is literally getting ready to react as if your life is in danger, even though it might just be someone cutting in front of you in line. Now, here's the kicker. The amygdala is super fast. It processes emotional information almost instantly. It reacts first before your prefrontal cortex, the logical decision-making part of the brain, even has a chance to catch up. That's why, in moments of high emotion, we often act impulsively. We're being hijacked by that emotional, survival-based response. This is why reacting feels automatic. It's your brain's default setting. But the problem is, when we react from the amygdala, we're not thinking clearly. We're not being rational. Instead of choosing the best course of action, we're being driven by emotions that are usually not the most helpful in the moment. The power of the prefrontal cortex. But here's where it gets exciting. You can access a different part of your brain when you decide to respond instead of react. That's where your prefrontal cortex comes in. The prefrontal cortex is the area of your brain that governs logic, decision-making, and impulse control. When you pause, take a deep breath, and give yourself a moment to reflect, you're activating your prefrontal cortex. You're allowing yourself to step out of that knee-jerk reaction and engage the part of your brain that helps you think through a situation rationally. This means that, instead of being driven by emotion, you're now able to make a thoughtful choice about how you want to respond. When you respond, you're using your brain in a more intentional way, and over time, you can actually rewire your brain to make responding your default. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about taking control of your emotional response so you can deal with things in a way that aligns with your values, goals, and sense of peace. Neuroplasticity, rewiring your brain. This is where neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, comes into play. Essentially, the more you practice responding thoughtfully, the more your brain learns this new way of reacting. Just like you can build muscle with physical exercise, you can strengthen your emotional muscle by practicing mindful responses. Every time you pause and make a conscious choice, you're strengthening the neural pathways that lead to better emotional control. So every time you choose to respond instead of react, you're literally retraining your brain to default to a more thoughtful, controlled response. This takes time, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. Part 4. Practical strategies for shifting from reaction to response. Now that we know how the brain works and how mindfulness can help us rewire our responses, let's get into the practical steps you can take today to start shifting from automatic reactions to intentional responses. The 5-step process for training your mind. I want to give you a concrete framework for responding rather than reacting. You can start practicing this right away, and I promise you, with consistent effort, it will become second nature. Here's the 5-step process. Acknowledge the trigger. The first step is simply recognizing that something has triggered you. This is where awareness comes in. The moment you feel that emotional surge, whether it's frustration, anger, anxiety, or even excitement, acknowledge it. You don't have to judge it. Just notice, okay, I'm feeling triggered right now. This is my cue to pause. Example, you're in a meeting and someone interrupts you mid-sentence. You feel irritation rise up. Instead of snapping, you recognize, I'm feeling frustrated. Pause and breathe. Once you've acknowledged the trigger, take a moment to pause. Yes, I mean literally stop for a few seconds. Close your eyes if you need to, and take a deep breath. Deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body and mind. This pause doesn't have to be long. Just a few seconds will do. This is your space to regain control of your emotional state before you react impulsively. Example, in that meeting, instead of immediately snapping at the interrupter, you breathe for a few seconds, letting go of the frustration. Identify your feelings. This step involves getting a little deeper. Now that you've paused, take a moment to label the feeling you're experiencing. Is it anger, fear, hurt, anxiety, or something else? Identifying your emotion helps you separate it from your actions. It's like stepping back and observing your own thoughts and feelings from a distance. Example, I'm feeling frustrated because I feel like I'm not being heard. But this doesn't have to lead to an angry response. Choose your response. Here's where the magic happens. Now that you've acknowledged, paused, and identified your emotion, you can make a conscious choice about how you want to respond. Think about the outcome you want. Do you want to escalate the situation? Or do you want to resolve it calmly? Responding thoughtfully isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about choosing a response that reflects who you want to be in the situation. Example: instead of snapping at the person who interrupted you, you decide to say, "I'd like to finish my thought, and then I'd love to hear your perspective." You're not denying your frustration, but you're responding with respect and clarity. Act with intent. Finally, after you've chosen your response, take action. Deliver your response with calm and clarity. Your body language, tone of voice, and choice of words should reflect your intention to respond thoughtfully, not react impulsively. Example: you speak calmly and assertively, without aggression or defensiveness. You've chosen to handle the situation with respect and composure, and your response has more impact because it comes from a place of control. Bonus tip: use visualization and self-talk. Sometimes, in the heat of the moment, it can be hard to remember these steps. That's why visualization is so helpful. Before you even find yourself in a challenging situation, take a few minutes to visualize how you would like to respond. Imagine yourself in a similar situation, feeling triggered, but choosing to respond instead of react. Picture yourself breathing, pausing, and choosing a calm, measured response. This mental practice will help reinforce your new habit. Also, use empowering self-talk to remind yourself of the value of responding thoughtfully. "I'm in control of my reactions," or "I choose to stay calm and focused." Positive self-talk helps rewire your mindset, making it easier to stay intentional when emotions arise. Part 5. Staying consistent. Building a lasting habit of responding, not reacting. Okay, so by now you've learned about the power of responding versus reacting, the science behind it, and some practical strategies to get you started. But here's the thing. It's one thing to understand this concept and feel inspired in the moment, and another thing to actually live it consistently. So let's talk about how to make this a lasting habit, something that becomes your default way of responding to the ups and downs of life. The power of consistency. Consistency is key. Just like any other habit, the more you practice responding mindfully, the more it becomes second nature. But you can't just expect it to happen overnight, right? This takes time, and it's going to require ongoing effort. Think of it like building muscle at the gym. You don't see results after one workout, but after a few weeks of consistent effort, you start to notice changes. Your muscles get stronger, your endurance improves, and it feels less like effort and more like routine. Same goes for your emotional responses. The more you practice mindfulness and the 5-step process we talked about, the easier it gets to choose your response over time. Eventually, you'll get to a point where your brain starts to make the switch from reacting to responding almost automatically, and that's when the magic happens. But here's the thing. This isn't about perfection. It's about progress. You won't always get it right, and that's perfectly normal. What's important is that you keep showing up, keep practicing, and keep learning from your mistakes. Start small. Focus on one situation at a time. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to change habits is trying to overhaul everything at once. Instead of trying to change your response to every situation, start small. Pick one specific area of your life or one type of situation where you want to improve your reactions. For example, maybe you're someone who gets triggered by emails at work, and that's where you tend to react impulsively. Or maybe you get defensive when your partner criticizes you. Whatever it is, pick one situation you can focus on for a week or two. When you master that, you can move on to the next area. Focusing on one situation at a time gives you the space to refine your process and build confidence. It also keeps things manageable and prevents you from feeling overwhelmed by trying to change everything at once. Set realistic goals and celebrate small wins. Along with consistency comes the importance of setting realistic goals and celebrating your wins, no matter how small they seem. Change takes time, and it's easy to get discouraged if you expect to be perfect right away. Instead, focus on small, achievable goals and acknowledge each win along the way. For instance, let's say you successfully chose to respond mindfully in a tough conversation. That's a huge win. Celebrate that moment of growth. Maybe it was only a small pause, or maybe you still felt some frustration, but you chose to respond instead of react. That's progress, and that's worth celebrating. By acknowledging your progress, you reinforce the habit and give yourself positive reinforcement to keep going. This boosts your motivation and helps build momentum. Track your progress and reflect. A great way to stay on track is by tracking your progress and reflecting on your journey. You can do this through journaling or simply taking a moment at the end of each day to ask yourself, how did I handle the challenges I faced today? When did I react and when did I respond? Reflection is a powerful tool for growth. It helps you pinpoint patterns in your behavior. Identify areas where you may have slipped into old habits, and celebrate the moments when you did manage to respond thoughtfully. Over time, you'll start to see a shift in how you handle difficult situations, and that reflection will remind you of how far you've come. You can also ask yourself questions like, what triggered me today? How did I feel in that moment? What would have been a better response? How did I feel afterward? This self-awareness is a key ingredient in building new habits. When you can reflect honestly on your responses, you give yourself the opportunity to fine-tune and grow even more. Accountability. Share your journey. Changing your emotional habits is much easier when you have support. Accountability can be a game changer, especially if you're doing this with a friend or partner. Share your goals and progress with someone you trust. Having someone to encourage you, cheer you on, or even just listen can make all the difference in staying consistent. If you don't have someone to share with, consider joining an online community or group focused on personal growth or mindfulness. It's incredible how much motivation you can get from hearing others' experiences and sharing your own. It reminds you that you're not alone on this journey. Dealing with setbacks. It's okay to fall. Just get back up. Let's be real. Setbacks are a part of the process. You're not going to get it right every time, and that's perfectly fine. The important thing is how you handle those moments when you fall back into old habits. If you find yourself reacting impulsively, don't beat yourself up. Instead, use it as a learning opportunity. Ask yourself, what triggered me? What was I feeling in that moment? How could I have responded differently? Then, use that reflection to adjust and improve for next time. Every mistake is an opportunity to grow, and it's a sign that you're pushing yourself to get better. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and giving yourself grace when things don't go as planned. Conclusion: the power of your response. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today, but let's take a moment to really drive home the heart of this message. You have the power to choose how you respond to every situation life throws your way. Life is full of unpredictable moments. Some are exhilarating, and some can feel downright overwhelming. But one thing is always within your control: how you respond. You have the ability to pause, reflect, and choose the reaction that aligns with the best version of yourself. And that choice is transformative. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it Learning to respond instead of react takes time, patience, and practice. It's not a magic switch you flip overnight. But with consistent effort, mindfulness, and self-awareness, you can train your mind to choose calm, clarity, and intentionality in even the most chaotic situations. You see, reacting is easy. It's the default, our brain's automatic survival mechanism. But responding, that's where the real growth happens. That's where you show up as your best self. When you choose to respond thoughtfully, you're not just creating more peace in your life. You're also building stronger relationships, more emotional resilience, and a deeper sense of inner control. You're becoming someone who is no longer ruled by impulsive reactions, but is instead able to navigate the world with purpose. And here's the best part. You don't have to be perfect. Progress is what matters. Every time you pause and choose to respond instead of react, you're reinforcing a new habit, rewiring your brain, and moving one step closer to a more mindful, empowered version of yourself. Even on the days you slip up, that's okay. Those moments are part of your growth, and you can always reset and try again. So, what's your next step? Start small. Pick one situation in your life where you know you tend to react and practice applying the 5-step process. Acknowledge the trigger, pause and breathe, identify your feelings, choose your response, and act with intention. Over time, these moments of practice will compound, and responding will become your natural way of navigating life. And if you fall short, that's part of the journey. Celebrate the times you get it right, reflect on the times you don't, and keep moving forward with the knowledge that you're building something powerful within yourself. The power to respond is in your hands. Your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are yours to control. And as you continue this journey, you'll find that the more you choose to respond mindfully, the more peace and clarity you'll create in your life. You'll build stronger relationships, grow more emotionally resilient, and be someone who brings calm and control into every room you walk into. Remember, it's not about reacting to life, it's about responding with purpose. And that's a choice you can make every single day. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Now it's time for you to put what you've learned into practice. Start small, keep growing, and be proud of the progress you make along the way. You've got this, and your future self will thank you for it. Final words of encouragement. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone you think could benefit from learning how to respond instead of react. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or personal experiences you'd like to share, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you're implementing these strategies in your life. You are the creator of your responses, and I truly believe that every small choice you make brings you closer to the calm, empowered life you're capable of living. Stay mindful, stay patient, and most of all, stay kind to yourself. You've got this.